Hello again. This is Ben Hitchcock Cross talking to you today about the Sue Novak case and Chrissy Preston, the nominal head of Internal Affairs. I think there's a few key issues that have come out of this testimony here that I don't think we really knew before, either for the whole state of Wisconsin, but certainly not the Department of Corrections. So one of the things that's going on here is that there's an internal affairs department, I guess is what it's office, who knows. And it's comprised of a couple of investigators and a head of the department, and that's about it. The low-level employees are investigated by the wardens and the security and HR people there, but when politics, I think, comes into play, meaning when the secretary, who, remember, is a politically appointed position, that person sort of anybody above the administrator rank and above is really sensitive to the political establishment, which, we do want civilian control, meaning political control over the government employees here. So certainly the police, certainly the prison guards like that. And of course the Department of Workforce Development, or maybe even Natural Resources, or all of them. So that is important, that we do want, political decisions to be a part of how government decisions are made. Okay, I mean, and you accept that, I think, on the local level, which is, the mayor is the one who's supposedly in charge, and if enough people come to the mayor and say, hey, we want you to stop doing X, or we want, to put green dye in the river on St. Patty's Day or whatever, that the mayor is going to be sensitive to that and actually do that. We want a mayor who's going to be clear enough that they're not going to just be bought off to do what, the powerful want, that they're going to be susceptible to Democratic control as opposed to, let's say, a warden who we want to be sort of insulated from that Democratic control and just to sort of be doing their job, following their job duties as they're written and doing their job as directed. Okay, so I think that's the conceptual difference here. But what ends up happening is a lot of times clear, rational decisions that are going up the chain of command there are then we're finding out here from Chrissy Novak, and we'll find that out, I think, at the Department of Public Instruction and so forth and so on. There's this, what they call the cabinet. So that is the secretary or whatever the head of that department is called, and their inner circle. Usually it's a deputy secretary. Usually there's some kind of HR chief. Usually there's some kind of, quasi-media special political operative person, and probably just somebody who the head picks. Could be their friend, could be somebody they like, who knows. But it's their advisors, okay? So, and we see that it used to just be sort of at the presidential level. We call it the cabinet, but even, Milwaukee Public Schools has what they call the cabinet. So I think in a lot of ways that's just sort of title inflation like you see all over the place. Triple executive vice president for, I don't know what. But you get the concept. So that, I think, is part of what's going on. But what I'm really trying to focus here is warden below, those are really job rule violations. Internal affairs, that's really political. Okay, and another aspect that can be with political is sometimes we say woke, but also that can mean, hey, we're afraid of, and we heard this with Molly Zillig, I'm sure, that her number one job is to protect the department from liability, right? She said that's her job for the sheriff's department, and it seems like that's what she does, meaning over protecting, say, Mr. Lucky from harassment, just for example. Okay. So with all that in mind, I think it's really clear from the testimony of Chrissy Preston that she's getting direct feedback. She calls it updates, but she's getting feedback directly from both the secretary, but more importantly, and I think what's happening here is Amy Pechacek, the judge's boss, is the one who's, if not making the decision, she's the one who's directly conveying what the secretary wants, meaning Warden Novak gone. So he can then publicly say, hey, this escape wasn't my fault. It's this lady. Oh, and by the way, she's too emotional, so let's get rid of her anyway. Okay? So I think that's part of what's going on. I think that very much that if you look at Chrissy Preston's testimony with that in mind, that she knows that it's a hit and that she knows that Amy Pechacek told her to get rid of Miss Novak, a lot of her testimony, including what she doesn't remember, makes a lot more sense. So that is the theory that I'm working under, because I think that fits the information we have from Miss Preston the best. Again, they are, it's directly coming from the secretary or the deputy secretary to internal affairs, and then it goes on from there. That's why even she's not willing, this is Miss Preston, the head of internal affairs, is not willing to say what any actual document that has her name on it actually says, because it turns out that the secretary or the HR department or some combination thereof, or the whatever, is changing everything. So just like we see that the secretary's office is telling the wardens what to write and they're signing their names to it, so they don't really have anything to do with that, we see that these reports coming from the internal affairs and then presented to the courts and everybody else as being from internal affairs are, changed at will, that's a pretty big problem there, because again, it points to this fact that it would be one thing if we had political control over what the rank and file workers are doing, okay? But what's going on here is something that's way more insidious, and I think that's the key takeaway from this video here, is they are pretending that somebody else is making this decision. And because of employment power, the people who are nominally making that decision are too afraid to say, no, I'm not making this decision. I don't have, so we have to go through teams, and it was a group decision, it was a collaborative effort, but it really means that the superintendent, the secretary, the whatever, is the one making this decision. The person with the employment power is the one who's making this decision, and everybody else is just sitting around trying to figure out what they want. So that, I think, but again, it's the civilians hiding behind the actual bureaucrats. So it looks like the warden's making the decision, but that's not true. It looks like the division administrator is making the decision, but that's not true. All throughout the line there's this, you never really know who's making the decision, because not only is it political, the political people are too, I guess, afraid of their own decisions to put it in writing that they're the ones that are doing it. So that's the problem, is that we can't hold the politicians accountable, the Secretary Carrs of the world accountable, when they hide behind wardens and everybody else and then lie to the public to say that this is, that the facts are going where they might. Well, if it's true what Chrissy Preston says, that the secretary and the deputy secretary and the cabinet, I should say, could have changed documents, her documents, to the point that she can't even know what she said, then it can't be true that the facts could go where they lay, because they may have done that at one point, and even if they did, or even if Chrissy Preston got the smell of the land, she knew what was going on, and she knew which way the wind was blowing, that's, as likely as anything else, that she just does what she's told without needing. She doesn't even need to be told, I guess, that she just does it and gets rid of, puts all the blame on Sue Novak. But again, we're going through all this testimony here, and I'm not putting any documents in front of her yet, because we want to see what her actual decision-making process, and it turns out there is none. They're supposed to be investigators, And it doesn't seem like, A, she's capable of investigating anything based on her background and what her testimony is, and B, that they are aware that there's, I mean, the Sonnenberg, as we'll see, I think is trying to do some kind of job, even though he knows it's a snow job too. But I think it clearly, Chrissy Preston's failure to remember is so obviously covering something up, and what it's covering up is who told her to do what. So we'll see that with Mac DeFesahai, the division administrator, when it comes to that. She's got one story, and then it changes night and day. It's something else. So that'll be exciting, and stick with us. We'll keep you informed.